This is your 2-minute warning, so if you want to grab a drink if you'd like and grab a seat, we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, John. So good afternoon and welcome to the Family Business Alliance's second quarter event. This event is the second installment of our four-part series on best practices for family business. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. My name is Bill Muir. I am the fourth generation president and owner of Grand Rapids Label Company and also the chairman of the board of the Family Business Alliance. We are here today. We have a great event planned for you this afternoon. In this interactive session, we'll discuss the hows and whys of effective family meetings and councils. Before we get started, I'd like to go ahead and recognize our supporters. We have our 2018 FBA Platinum underwriters, BDO, Fifth Third Bank, Warner Norcross, and Judd. And then our 2018 Gold underwriters, Bright Star Capital Partners, Chase, Pondera Advisors, and Varnum. So thank you very much to them. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. So Ira Bryck comes to us is the president and founder of the Family Business Center of Amherst, Massachusetts. So it is an association that does family business events, family business retreats. Ira also hosts a radio show. He writes advice columns, and I love the title of this, Fresh Air and Cold Water for the Perplexed Family Business. He's written 3 plays about family business. They've been performed over 100 times and around the world. And you were saying, what was the most recent you said? It was
the one that's my autobiography was just done in Catalan outside of Barcelona.
So, very cool. And he was also it was the fourth generation in a family retail clothing store in New York. So without further ado, I will ask Ira to come up here and welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to be using some special skills today because I was going to have my laptop here, but now I'm looking there, and I did just have my right cataract done. So I'm still impressed with my supervision in my right eye. So if you see me staring over there, I'm not disregarding you. I'm actually trying to see a little bit. I want to make this as useful for you as possible, and I was just meeting a few people in the audience and realizing that some people have businesses that, as you would expect, the people in the business don't talk to the people that are not in the business. It's a private company. There's something to be said for closely held being the communication style, not just the financial format. Thank you. And then others that have family councils, do retreats, have family offices. So there's a lot of different experiences, and I want to hear from you. We'll have some time for questions at the end, but I also want to encourage you to just raise your hand, interrupt, scream out. I put on programs like this too, and on the evaluation sheets, I'll say, what gem did you get out of today's speaker? And many times the gem will be the thing that somebody in the audience said that disagreed with the speaker. That's what I'm taking home with me. So I will feel useful and helpful even if that's what you get out of today, because there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's no right answers. There's no typical family business, and there's no one way to do everything. So I do have too many slides, and that's because I really want to, this is going to be online in a PDF format. The slides that I don't cover in depth, and I'm not trying to, are still going to be helpful for you to look at later. So, if I say this is one that, you can go home and read. But basically, this is what I would like you to know by 6 o'clock. Well, that's after the cocktail hour. So I will teach you things until 5, and then you may still learn things from 5 to 6. But basically to talk about why it's important to focus on the business. A lot of times people will say, family's more important than business, and that's certainly true for obvious reasons, but why businesses that focus on the business more than the family tend to have less conflict. We'll talk about that a little bit. How to get change going. There's a lot of people that say, I would have family meetings, I would have a family council, but most people don't want it. How do we get that going? Talk about that a little bit. Talk about how to build an agenda, including about some issues that you might feel are undiscussables. How to get that going. Talk about how to use different tools. Towards the end of the presentation, there's going to be a talk about tools that you can use, or just perspectives you can use, or just vocabulary that you can use, that if somebody says something that's objectionable for a reason that you can't quite put your finger on, but you know that it smells bad, this might give you some vocabulary of why it smells bad and how to convince the other person that it's not because they smell. How to ask good questions, how to get started. So we're going to talk about all of that. I want to start with a little bit of Hollywood to just look at two contrasting families that have meetings. Right, the first one is from a really good movie called Avalon, about a Jewish family in Baltimore. Doesn't matter that they're Jewish, by the way, I'm Jewish. So just watch this, and then we're just going to notice what you see here.
I don't think that we have to chip in for Simcha. That's all I'm saying.
This is part of our tradition. One brings another over. We supported them. We took care of them. You brought me.
When's the last time we gave percentages of our money? How long has it been? It's got to have been 25 years.
Bell came over in the late 20s, so it wouldn't be 25 years. Let's see now. Couldn't be 25 years. Let's see now.
It's close to 25 years.
1930.
It came to 1930. Now, it's close to 25 years, and that's it.
What do you want to do? You want to start supporting every Tom, Dick, and Harry?
We are not talking about Tom, Dick, and Harry. We are talking about my wife's father, Heuby. You talk like an idiot.
Don't call my son an idiot. He's not an idiot.
Tom, Dick, and Harry, for God's sake.
He has never had any sense. He has never had common sense.
Just because Jules has money, you got a right to call my Heuby an idiot?
Come on, nobody's calling anybody an idiot.
He called my son an idiot. His son makes money, and all of a sudden they get this kind of attitude.
What attitude?
What are you talking about?
Oh, you live out there in the sticks. You don't even wait for anybody before you cut the turkey.
But this is about the goddamn turkey again. The goddamn turkey again and again and again.
Yeah.
The man has a mind like an elephant.
Oh, that wasn't unfair that he drove all that time and you go ahead and eat the dinner before he gets there?
Who ate? We didn't eat the dinner, we cut the turkey.
You ate.
It wasn't a question of how much you ate or you didn't eat. It was the act. It was the disregard for an older brother. You might as well have stabbed me in the heart.
What's this about here, huh? This meeting is about cutting a turkey or is it about Simca? Why don't we get back to the issue and figure out a way to support Simca and his family?
Oh, another member of the wealthy contingent is speaking.
Uncle Gabriel, we're out there busting our asses trying to make a living. Why are you so contemptuous about that?
The language, the children are outside. We're not talking about a lot of money for Iva's brother.
What do you mean it's not a lot of money?
All right, enough of this. I'll give Simca the money, and that'll put an end to it, all right?
I'm with you, pal.
Good. Let's move on to next business.
Next business.
Right.
Next business. I resign. That's the next business. I resign. I'm finished. I'm finished with this family. Come on,
Let's try to settle this.
come on, you poor Jules. And I'm inside. I'm not gonna stay where I'm not wanted. Come not wanted.
Come back, Sam. We need you, Sam.
I don't know how this compares to your family, and some of these flaws that they're demonstrating might seem obvious to you, but I'm just wondering if we could just collect a few of your comments on what you saw happening here. Just anybody, shout out.
Nobody gets along.
Right?
Everybody's got their own opinion on how things ought to be.
At least they're expressing their opinion. What else? Sorry? Right. Lack of organization. Anybody? They keep referring to this age-old thing. Excellent movie, by the way. What else?
Wrong focus.
Wrong focus? Yeah. Okay. A few more.
At least they were in the same room together.
That's true. They made an effort. They had regular meetings just like this. Right. I mean, you need a facilitator, but this guy didn't seem like the neutral, as they say. A couple more.
Talking over one another.
Right. Nobody's listening. It's not, the ideas are not building at all. Just the anger is building. One more. Right, and that happens. In this movie, there was the family that stayed in the city, the family that moved to the suburbs. They had, a definite line between them. Except for the two brothers-in-law, they were on opposite sides. Okay, compare that with this scene from Dances with Wolves, and just to set it up, this is their tribal council talking about the encroachment of the white man. And so just what's happening here?
Taku washichu kana seche ash. Niye gichi wowaga ka wachishni. Toka hechashni. Cha takunishni. Hok ash. Li washichu. Auki abeke no khanchana. Iha wakilicha. Oyate kilena. Shunk awakan. Opoanke wichu kipe. Makochi. Unkita wapi kila wanieti wajika esh. Lata wanieti wakchemena ki iha tap telo. Iplukchan yikan washichu kila nune oganaya.
Pehion tate wogala kila heshetu. Washtena han taku kila na wichaki yalo. Washichu kila na unshikabi na ha. O haknise chapi. O chaos washichu wanji ishnala shante de insya unya hantashi nunishni yalo. Ogana wowa kan yo haseche. You one block actor washichu la omaki Wowi chak jigla ka okihi seche. Hecha tu hantash ki chi wo unglaka pi koki hipi yalo.
Zintana guata. Tukata kea, e che wi yukchunkile, washtelo. Washichu kele tipi, unkisha rapi o kihishne. Washichu kele takpi unyan piktelo. Itazi pa kite, o kihishne hantash. Ho, nach esh, he uchasha wakan. He chachtelo.
Wasichi wanje, na tepe ke hantash. Na ya iyong shampo. Wanje o tepe hantash. Ota el autalo.
Woyukcha kile na wakan jina okihi. Na o yukcha shiche. Le toki ataya iwo unglaka piktelo. Hecha gai piktelo. Okay.
So what do you see happening here? Right? They're all listening. Are they all agreeing with each other? Not required. More respectful of each other. Again, the ideas are building, even though people are not trying to build on ideas, but slowly it's making more and more sense. What else? What do you notice between the generations? There's respect. The people that are so-called older and wiser are letting the younger people just say their perspective. Of course, they're going to be, in the scene, more rambunctious, more reactive. Nobody's saying, hey, calm down. Sitting in a circle, right. So, as opposed to the one leader facing everybody. There was very little need for facilitation. Not that that's the right way to do it, but, they made it look easy. Couple more. Right, they were acknowledging each other. So people felt free to say their view knowing that it was going to be respected. And at the end, the guy says, this is confusing. We should talk more. Didn't say, let's take a vote right now.
You could actually hear what they were talking about in the film, at least, without a lot of noise and back and forth and yelling at each other.
You did get that sense, even though nobody said, so what I hear you saying is, so, again, this is what you would call kind of a lucky family or a lucky culture. I have a friend that's actually Lakota Sioux that watched this and understood the native tongue and was saying, this is not how my people ever behave. This is Hollywood. But still. Okay, so if you've been coming to these meetings or done any reading on family business, you know the three circles. The family, the management, the ownership, they all overlap in weird ways. People wear different hats. Even the same person can have different perspectives where you would say, speaking as an owner, this move is not going to have the return on investment. But speaking as a family member, I feel strongly that I need to support this. It raises some questions. What are my rights as an owner? What do we do about the person who's just a family member? They're coming to this meeting. We invited them to this meeting, but why are they even at this meeting? Even as I was going around meeting a few people, they were saying, we're not quite sure why people that are not owners or managers should be involved in a family meeting. So in family meetings that I help with, a lot of times I'll say, could you just say that again, but start with speaking as an owner? And then I'll ask the same person, what is your view of what you just said as a family member? Well, as a family member, I kind of disagree with what I just said as an owner. There's complex things. Like you look at this, the Indian tribe, they're saying, this is confusing. It's good to just respect that this is a confusing thing. and to acknowledge that you wear different hats. At different times, you need to think differently. So I am a believer in asking good questions. I actually think that's why I ended up with a radio show. I just get to ask questions and interview people. It's interesting to me. But there's some sticky questions here. What isn't getting discussed? That's an obvious one. You can have numerous family meetings every week, and then I'll say, what questions are you not asking? Everybody's going to have questions that they're not asking. What would be a question, not in your family, but what do you think is a question that maybe doesn't get asked at family business meetings? I have one is, what makes you the boss? Right? Is it because you're just the last person standing? I consulted to a business where there were 40 shareholders and only one of them worked in the business. And basically, the way that several people put it to me is, he didn't die. Everybody else that was smarter and more talented than him just passed away. And nobody really wanted to be that rude in that family to say, why is it that you're the only one in the business? And why is it that those teenagers or high school and college students that all want to come in can't come in? And at that meeting, I was really happy to see that some of the teenagers had the nerve to say to this guy, with all due respect, my dear uncle, if you want to retire in 10 years like you say, and you still want this business to continue for another 100, why are you making efforts to keep me out? That was a sticky question. Once they asked it, all 40 people said, like, yeah, why did we never ask that question before? And can our crazy family do this? You know, the man that invented the term dysfunctional family said that it applies to 99% of all families, John Bradshaw, because nothing is 100%. So that means if there's 100 people in this room, I don't know if there might be only one functional family. Right? Raise your hand if you're from that high-functioning family. Okay. That's a higher response rate than I usually get. Usually I get nobody out of thousands of people. Most people in this room think that you come from a dysfunctional family. But it's good enough to have these discussions. You all have businesses, you all have things to discuss, and most people that come from family businesses have a little bit of a feeling of, we're not doing this the right way, we're not professional enough, we're too small to have family meetings and retreats and family offices. People say that to me right now in this room. Too small. We're not a big professional company. And how can it help and hurt any family that it owns a business and vice versa? That's a question that you could ask yourself. Even ask a member of your family that's not in ownership or in management. How does it help or hurt you that our family owns a business? Well, it could be that everybody in their class growing up knew about their business and expected them to do certain things, including join the business, or suspected that they might be wealthier than they felt themselves to be. That's a reason to get kids involved. You know, sometimes they talk about how young should people be to come to family business meetings, and sometimes the answer is 14, because maybe that's old enough that kids can understand some of these complex issues. And there's been articles over the last couple of years of family business or not, if you start having these complex discussions with kids who are in their early teens, they grow up being able to handle some of these complexities. And they understand, growing up, their own rationale of why I do or don't want to join the family business. I have a friend that wrote a book, Trapped in the Family Business. And a lot of people, according to his research, who he interviewed, joined the family business because they just assumed this is what is supposed to be done. They grew up saying, someday this will all be yours, and they said, well, I guess that's my fate. And I've spoken to, I just gave a talk to the Babson College Family Business Club, and there was not one U.S. student in the room. They were from all over the world, and that's Babson's thing, is global entrepreneurship. and they came from China, they came from India. They grew up just being told, you are going to be taking over this family business. And they just accepted that as a fact of life. And they were fine with it. But a lot of Americans also grow up with that. You know, this is the land of more choices of opportunity, and they never really question it. So they never really know why I should or shouldn't. Do I have the talent, the passion? And these are things that you can discuss in a family business, where you could have your child say, you know what, I always wanted to be an actor or an artist or whatever it is. I have an actor and an artist. My two children, I don't know how that happened. But, you know, if I had a family business, I don't think either of them would ever want to join it because that's just not their calling. So this is the kind of discussion that you can have is this your calling? And is it a failure if our business doesn't continue into the next generation? And when you talk about the failure rate of family business, there's so many inaccuracies of that idea that 2 out of 3 family businesses fail. The 1/3 that succeed are only called a success because they didn't sell. If you have a super successful sale of your company, that's considered a failure in that study. So there's just a lot of questions to be answered when you get your family together. And of course, there's a lot of objections to why to not have it. Number one is we're too small, we're not professional enough, we're not really a family business just because we have some family members working here. They don't really, my kids don't really work in the family business. This is just something they're doing until they figure out what they want to do. There's all kinds of reasons for it. And then there's a lot of situations where people feel that we do have something that we definitely need to talk about, but I'm in the minority. Nobody else wants to have the family business meetings. I'm hearing all of these objections, but I don't know how to get it started. And so just one example is I run an organization like this with member companies, and there were a mother and 2 sons, and the 2 sons were very pleasant people, but they constantly were quibbling with each other, even though they did it in a polite way, and they would go home and they would both report to their wives, I had another fight with my brother, another fight with my brother, and then there was one topic where they brought the wives to the meeting, and then it came out in conversation that they do tell their wives about every argument that they have, but they never report to the wives when they made up. And they frequently made up because they were loving people, they respected each other, but that was just not as exciting news as what did you do today? It was exciting to say I had another fight with my brother. It wasn't as exciting as to say I made up. So the 2 wives found out together that, wow, a lot of these arguments that we're both hearing about are getting solved. And we should be in the loop on that more because we have not really been socializing. We haven't been out as 2 couples in a long time because we're just assuming our husbands are not getting along. Yet another reason to have family meetings and to communicate in those family meetings that one good practice would be to talk about how we make up. So there's a lot of reasons to not do it, and there's a lot of reasons to do it. And I'm just curious, I'm just throwing out a question here. If you don't have family meetings, could you reveal just a few of the reasons why it doesn't happen? It doesn't have to be anything I said. If you don't have family meetings, what are a few of your reasons why not? How old are the people you're talking about? Uh-huh. Do you have any idea what they might be wondering about the business? Do you have discussions with them like, do you want to ask me any questions about the business? Uh-huh. So if you did have everybody together in the same room, what would you call that agenda item that would answer some of what you're saying is not discussed enough? In other words, what would you say, now we're going to get to this next agenda item, which is, I would call it entry policies for the business. What is required for somebody to enter this business, or what we would like to see of a candidate from our family that's going to enter the business. Right? So what are a couple of things that you might want to communicate to anybody in your business that's thinking of coming in, a family member that might be one day an owner? So to just list the criteria together and discuss the criteria. Can you see where it would be more helpful to do that in an organized meeting instead of these one-on-one discussions? So what would be another agenda item that you would see in your family that you would want to discuss in a more organized fashion than the just impromptu one-on-one? Yes?
I'm just going to say that for me personally, it's not my job to determine the agenda item. I think that if we had really good coaches and really good people to help us do that, for us personally, I think that we have had some good guides along the way, but it requires from us to be really intuitive on that. So for us, I would like to see much more of like a coach that's really able to guide us in some of that stuff.
So an outside facilitator that could come in and do what you think the family members can't or shouldn't.
So for us, we've had situations where we've had to switch or change or ask or come to them and say, this is what we'd really like to do. This is what we'd like to see on the agenda. This is and for us, we're like constantly, I know for me personally, just as a mom, I'm that person back here going, and I know my husband as well, is we're coming to things like this, like FBA or other outside resources, looking for what we need to do, and then going back and saying, okay, we want you to do this. Help us do this. And it's exhausting. Well, I would really like to see, for us, that would be more helpful to have that person guiding us with a more forward role.
It certainly is good in many cases to get an outside coach or neutral facilitator, and not to have the family business meeting run by somebody that's running the business also, because you also want to be bringing out the fact that this is a family meeting, a family that owns a business, right? But still it might be necessary for family members to say to that coach, here's a couple of the insecurities that I have, a couple of the confusions that I have. You just want to be able to impart that to a neutral person. Sorry? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we do a lot of the work, where we're hiring people to say, help us get to the next level.
Well, I do agree that the coach can suggest a lot of the most useful topics. So if a coach came to you and said, in a lot of family businesses, there's confusion about who makes what or who owns what, a compensation philosophy, would that be a helpful agenda item for you? Right?
And I think for all of us here, we need to learn how to be attentive to that, how to look at our children as well as to be our successors, and be able to screen that out. And sometimes we're not doing that.
Well, I think the talented coach is going to listen well and then feed back what they've heard you say. Sometimes they say about a consultant is somebody that comes in and borrows your watch and then tells you what time it is. So the family sometimes, I just want to point out, this is a book that I'm reading. I'm doing a book discussion group with a few business owners, and this is one of the 2 books, Leading Change, which is excellent. And he's talking about how if you want something to change in an organization, this is to answer your question, it's good to go through this certain process. And change needs leaders. Sometimes people get confused of the difference between a leader and a manager. And what the book makes the point is there are leaders that are necessary and managers that are necessary. You can't have a company just of managers with no leaders. And you're not going to have family business meetings or councils or retreats without leaders. And what he's saying is the first two urgent steps are A, to create urgency, to create a sense of urgency. What's going to happen if we don't do this, right? And in a company, he's saying, when things are too cushy, if you're sitting in a conference room and you notice that you have a gorgeous mahogany conference table, and no offense if anybody here makes gorgeous mahogany conference tables, and Persian rugs, what he's saying is sell them and move into a much crummier place to make people know that you're on the edge. This is do or die. And in a family business, you have to say, what's the cost of doing nothing? So let's say that you have a talented facilitator, but you're feeling the urgency. If we don't do these things, our family is not going to be as healthy as it needs to be. And then you identify other people. It could be, so you work in the business, and you have ownership in the business, and you're a family member, right? So you can figure out who else that I know that wears 2 or 3 of those hats might be feeling the same urgency as me, right? You go and you form what he is saying is a coalition for change. And you say, this might be what you need to do even to hire that facilitator, right? But even if you have the facilitator, to get together with a couple of people and start small and to just say, what are the urgent things that need to be changed here? And we're going to lead that change by creating this coalition, and then talk with that facilitator, or you can do it yourself, and to just say, here are our confusions. What's the compensation philosophy? How do you enter the business and exit the business? What is our role as community members? Do we have a mission that appeals to the public? Are we proud to be part of this family business? I mean, you can be in Grand Rapids and have a munitions factory and really successful, and you're sort of embarrassed to walk down the street because, you know, your product is killing small children in a foreign land or something like that. So you really need to say, what are our problems? First, you need to diagnose what the problems are in the company that you want to fix. It makes it really easy to bring other people together. But then I agree to have a neutral person that can say, okay, hearing your pain, you have a pain, you go to the doctor says, okay, that pain can be this, this, or this. Now we have to figure out which of those it really is. So that's all to make the point is, even if you have that trusted neutral person, he's still going to be saying, or she, does it hurt when I do this? Is it better like this or like this? And to figure out what the agenda is. And then this book actually goes on. Yeah. Coming to these meetings. Yeah.
The weight on my shoulders is pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm appreciative to my creator or whoever that is that has guided me through that. But I also feel like if you want to look at something from a family business alliance that's going to push you forward, is that might be something
Right.
that you would open your
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, and I might be wrong, is that you're feeling the pain. You said, I feel a heavy weight. Whether you have a facilitator or not, because it's a good thing to do, but not required of everybody. Another family might not choose to have a facilitator, is that you still need to identify what things need to be fixed, right? I'm a facilitator. I'm in favor of facilitators. But, yeah. That's great.
But it's also been like, we've had to really actively seek that out. And I'm just saying, in my personal opinion.
Okay. I hear you saying two things. One is you want a facilitator to help you, and the other one is you've succeeded so far because you've done the work. You've sought things out, for instance. A facilitator can help you organize it, right? Can say, this is what the topics are that seem to be causing the urgency and the need for change. I'm just listing. Compensation strategy, enter and exit. Who gets to, is this a meritocracy? What do we do with people that are not talented in our family? What do we do with people that have substance abuse issues? What do we do to get the cousins that maybe are not talking well with each other because their parents don't get along? These are all topics, but first you need to feel the pain. You need to be aware of the pain. A facilitator, I always say, when I go in with a family, and some of them are really loving, peaceful people, and others of them are at war, I say, I'm not magic. Don't expect me to pull any rabbits out of hats. This is all going to be me facilitating. You know, the word fácil in Spanish or Latin, fácil, means I make it easier. I make it más fácil for you to do the work. But I can't just go in and do it. If I went into a company that was 3 brothers that were trying to figure out the next generation, I had to interview them. What are your opinions about fairness? What are your opinions about merit? I needed to find out where they were at so that I could help them write an employment policy about bringing in the next generation. One of the 3 brothers had a brilliant son that was already working there, and they really didn't, this father and son didn't really want the other cousins to come in, but the other 2, even though they agreed with the theory, don't bring anybody in unless they have talent, passion, and ability to make money. Those are the 3 things in Jim Collins' Built to Last. Those are the 3 factors that you need to succeed in business. And even after they wrote the employment policy, another brother said, I want to bring my kid in. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be 70% as talented as some stranger off the street that applies for this job, but I still want him to get the job. So as the facilitator, I needed to figure out, is that okay with all of you? It's your company. You can give it to charity. You can hire a nincompoop. You can hire your son who you admit is only 70% as talented. My job was to just help them do their job. I said to them, I think you're making a mistake. That kid who's 70% as talented is going to know he's 70% as talented. I mean, he might be deluded, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he's going to know, I don't really deserve this job. I suggest to you a policy that nobody comes in here unless they're the best in the world at this job. Right? When my program was at UMass, I was on several search committees. It's an affirmative action organization, and they would say, if there's a tie between 2 applicants, the job goes to the union member, woman, or person of color. Right? So the same thing I think applies in a family business, affirmative action for family. If you have people applying for this job, give it to the family member if it's affirmative action for family. So I'm saying a facilitator can help you figure out, but it's based on your values. In the end, the facilitator helps you figure out what are our values, what are our priorities, what changes do we think we need. But you're the leader, no facilitator, because the facilitator is not going to be there forever anyway. They need to teach you how to fish. I just want to say about getting started. You know, they say let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. It's good to have one event where, let's just say that there are 2 people or 3 people that are that coalition, because I do think that you're going to start with the people who are the coalition of the willing, as the US government was saying a while back, that feel the pain, that can agree on the need, that go and sell the idea to the others. We're not committing to monthly retreats or anything like that. We're going to have one event. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a mixture of family and business issues. It's going to be entertaining, because I run a program that I really feel like it needs to be fun. You've been out working all day, you work really hard. You know, I'm not telling jokes, I'm not singing songs, but in the end, you need to see the worthwhile use of your time here. And so, just to say, we're going to make this relevant to you. We're going to make it a little entertaining. We're going to bring in somebody from another family business that succeeded at this and talking about it. We're going to have some role playing about, what is going on in our competitor company. We're going to just role play that. We're going to watch some movie clips like we did before and talk about that. We're going to talk about what are the hopes and dreams of the 14 to 17-year-olds in the room. And we're just going to do it as an experiment and then to say what we liked and didn't like about it. So one taster event. And then you can handle one urgent policy. But you might not want to handle your own urgent policy. Maybe look at a case study. This is why in all the best business schools you talk about other people's cases. It's easy to solve other people's problems. Right? So bring in a company that you respect, that is having this problem, and do a little case. And this is where you can bring another expert in. You could bring in an MBA student. You could bring in, a professor from a local university who can just teach this case, and then you all just discuss it. And by doing that, you actually can see who are the interesting thinkers in the room. Maybe the introverted teenager that only plays video games suddenly has something really interesting to say. And you say, we got to keep our eye on that person. So one taster event. Then there's the question of who should attend. Should in-laws come? Well, there's a lot of companies that have in-laws as employees. There's one company near me where the father and son-in-law are in there. And the father has said to me, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is my daughter's getting a divorce. The good news is her husband, my son-in-law, is staying with us, and probably I'm going to be more in touch with him than I am with my daughter. I kind of wish that she was the daughter-in-law and this was my son. So in some cases, in-laws should definitely come. In other cases, like the one I was saying before, where the two daughters-in-law were not hearing from the two brothers, those in-laws should certainly be, at least at certain meetings. Maybe they don't need to be at every meeting, but where it's involved, where it could be that the business is considering some big change that's going to be a big financial risk, or a lot more work, or a big lifestyle adjustment. Somebody's going to have to move to Toledo. That should be a family discussion. That should bring in more people. And when do you bring in the young kids? Maybe not for every meeting, but when you're talking about where we hope our business is at in 10 or 20 years, you might want to hear from the younger generation. Like I was saying, this one retreat that I did, that there were two tables in the back. There was a table of high school cousins and a table of college cousins, and they were all expressing that they all wanted in, and they felt like they were being locked out. And their feeling was right. I mean, at that meeting, I was sitting on two bar stools. I was sitting on a bar stool, and then the one guy in the family business was like, I definitely don't want any business partners in the room. I enjoy being the only one of 40 that works in this business. And then a high school kid in the back said, well, you're 58 years old. Where do you want to be at 68 years old? I don't want to be working here at 68. And then another kid in the back said, well, if you don't want to be working at 68, then where are you going to be at when you're 65? Well, I'm going to probably be working 3 days a week when I'm 65. And then the other one said, how are you going to get there? Where do you need to be at when you're 62? And I'll say two things. One is those were smart, nervy kids. Secondly, it only happened when there was a facilitator in the room. Because I was creating a safety and permission, and I had also sort of pressured this guy to sit in the bar stool in the front of the room. He was mad at me after that, why did you make me go through that embarrassing situation where all these kids were trying to depose me? And I'm saying they were all thinking it, at least now you know they're thinking it. And they actually got you thinking a little bit too. So who should come? Whoever is necessary to be there, right? If you have a 30% partner who you're not really talking to, I was trying to facilitate a retreat for a company. The end of the story is they sold for a lot of money to a public company and they're all happy. In the beginning of the story, there were 5 branches of the family. 1 branch ran it, the other 4 were unhappy shareholders. And I was suggesting to them, we need to do a retreat where we bring in people from all 5 branches. I would suggest the most emotionally intelligent, reasonable, verbal, mature person from each branch of the family. And they were saying, I don't really want to sit in a room with them. And I'm saying, if you don't do that, you're going to be sitting in a courtroom with them, because I've interviewed a few of them and they are really, really annoyed. And then they ended the consultation. I was there no more. Next thing I know, I'm being deposed for 3 days in a row because they found my emails with the family on this guy's email, and it was I forget what you call it, but it was like a lawsuit that angry minority shareholders, and they tried to blow up the corporation, and luckily this guy came and bought it. The big company came and bought it. But, you know, there were people that they didn't want in the room because it was not going to be fun to talk with them. So sometimes you need to invite the people that you don't want to be there. Any comments or questions, related or slightly related? Do you have teenagers that are not in the business, that are not owners, that have not expressed an interest, that you feel might benefit for some reason by being in the discussion that you've not had yet? Wondering if anybody knows a family member like that. Okay, let me just say, you might. If you look around at your family tree, you might have teenagers in the room that can actually get something interesting started. And if you got together with those teenagers and you said, we're starting a project because we heard, this is where a facilitator, again, is helpful because they know what else is going on around the world. We have heard that in several other family businesses, teenage cousins do projects together so that they know each other, and then you get a sense of, do I like working with these other cousins? They might be different at 14 than they are at 25, but you know, if Freud was right, you're somewhat set in stone by the time you're 5. So if you don't like working with these people at 14 or in your teens, you might make a decision of, I'm never joining the family business if I have to work with those people. And you get them to work on philanthropy projects together. And you might think, well, we're not a really, wealthy family. We're not philanthropists. Along with, we're not big enough to have family meetings goes, we're not wealthy enough to do philanthropy. And there's a couple of wealth managers in the room. They can tell you that wealth is all relative. Most people think of wealth as people that have 20% more than them. But if you just get them working on a project together, and then they come back and they report on it, that's a really interesting topic for a family meeting. Here's what we discovered working together. And then you can talk about, this is our family values. This is things that our family just has, these tendencies and talents of how we work together. What you're saying happened in your philanthropy project together, that's what happened when we bought this competitor company. And you just get into those kinds of discussions. Some of the discussions that you're going to have at a family meeting are very practical, and others are kind of philosophical and futuristic. So again, just on the bottom, do you bring in estranged relatives? Well, again, this story that I told you before, they didn't want to bring in estranged relatives, but if you can figure out, how do we make peace with that person? Can we even go and send a diplomat from our family to go and talk with them? Because there are families that I've met in family businesses, some famous family businesses, that the reasons why these two cousins don't speak is one has a theory that their grandmother ripped off his brother, who's this guy's grandfather, and the story is so old and so convoluted. And then you go back and you hear the other side of the story. And I had this, my father worked for my mother's father, and he worked with his brother-in-law, my mother's brother-in-law. And the two of them never got along. And then out of the blue, years after both of these, my father and his brother-in-law had died, my sister and my cousin started having this fight about who had the better work ethic, my father or Uncle Joe. And they had both heard different stories from the two of them. And, I tried to facilitate a discussion, but that's why they say you need a neutral facilitator. It's like my cousin said, who are you to facilitate a discussion with me? Okay, so we covered that. I'm not going to cover this, but this is just like to say that at different stages of the business, you have to have different kinds of meetings. In the beginning, you might be just sitting around the kitchen table with your spouse and your kids saying, the reason I'm working so many hours and we don't have much money for fun these days is because I'm starting a business. Once you get that thing going, it might be a different kind of discussion where you're saying, now I'm working with my sister or my brother, and we're both putting in, but I have more money than my brother does, and so there's that uneven, and you're just explaining it in an appropriate way, and then you get into where it's cousins or where it's multi-generational, and you might be talking about, again, another concept from Native Americans is seventh generation. Now you think of seventh generation as like paper towels and toilet paper. There's a company, Seventh Generation, but it comes from this idea of live today so that 7 generations down the road, you helped didn't hurt the planet or society. And by multi-generations, you're saying, what can we do today that's going to strengthen our company for 100 years? So again, some of these agenda items that you might not be feeling the urgency and the pain to talk about what you need to do 100 years hence, but a facilitator might suggest, if you got into that discussion, you might find that these are interesting philosophical discussions that's going to have some practical application. So I'm just curious. I've asked some questions that people have answered, others that nobody had an answer to or a comment. What's an example of a business policy or a decision that you might make that might have ramifications well into the future? That you could be having a philosophical discussion with your family members about. Sorry? Employment policies. Can you say a little bit more about that? Right. Like, one famous employment policy is nobody comes in here unless they have their MBA and or 3 to 5 years of outside work experience, or they have some passion. I keep talking about passion, talent, ability to make money. Because down the road, people might look at this business and say, I'm not a loser, why do I want to join this business? If there's a family tradition of just bringing in whoever needs a job. Right? But if you hold it up as this is a meritocracy, that the best and the brightest get to take advantage of this. It might be hard to start that policy now. You might have somebody who's not the best and the brightest already working there, and then you have to say, don't worry, we're not firing you. And I hate to tell you, you're not the best and the brightest, but you could make a declaration better at a meeting than just to somebody in a one-on-one conversation. We are coming to a family decision that this is a meritocracy. We're always going to hire the best person for the job. And so if you're a talented person, intelligent, hardworking, studious, you might aspire to join this family business. And one of the reasons we're doing that is because we want to attract the best and the brightest who are not our family. And if this is a safety net, we're never going to get the best and the brightest who are not our family. Another one might be, we're aiming to have an exit plan. The obvious exit plan is to sell the company. So I'm announcing that one of our goals is to make this company as sales-worthy as possible. That's going to take some work because in our industry, you only get acquired if you're 50% more, bigger than we are now. So we need to grow this company. And so we need to take some risks to get it to that point. And so I'm hereby declaring that we are A, taking on more risk than might be comfortable for some people, B, only hiring the best and the brightest. So we're going to have a search committee. You might not get the job if a more qualified non-family member gets it. These are things that you really need to announce having some, thought through logic to it. And better to announce it at a meeting than to just go around and tell each individual person where it might be taken more personally. Do people agree or disagree or have a comment about that? The idea of announcing a big policy that might have ramifications for the future to a group of people rather than one-on-one.
How are you building this coalition now? You need a coalition to get control.
Again, the coalition might be people that feel the pain and the urgency. So they're saying, if we keep on going where we're going, we're not going to get where we want to get to. That could be the pain and the urgency. We're heading down. We need to head up. That coalition might get enough people together that they can go and talk to the non-converted and say, we're going to posit this idea that if we don't make a major change in our business philosophy, in our hiring policies, and our compensation policies, we are never going to get to the finish line. And we're never going to sell the company. Right? So that's the urgency is, if we don't really make major changes. There was a couple that owned a very, very nice bookstore near me, and they were thinking of selling it, and they went to a business broker that I had recommended, and the business broker said, there's only one way that you can sell your company, is to get your financials, which look like this. Yuck. Your financials need to look like this. This is an attractive company to buy, even a one-unit bookstore. It was a nice bookstore. It was a big, nice bookstore. And I think it's going to take this, and this measures to make your financials look like that. And they worked really hard with the goal of selling their company for like 4 or 5 years, and then they called me and they said, I just want to tell you, our financials now look like that, and now we don't want to sell the company. Right? So the goal that got them there was not, and in the end, they couldn't exist because then the age of Amazon and all of that, they failed, but now they own a very successful hot tub company, and their financials look great in the hot tub company because they knew how to run it. But again, it took a policy of the change we need to make because of these urgent threats facing us. So if you walk away with one thing from this meeting, it's what is the urgency that you're feeling, and what topics do we need to discuss to deal with that urgency? This guy that wrote this book, Leading Change, has a new book called Urgency. This to him is the most important factor of everything that was on that chart, feeling urgency. So just a couple of things about meetings is to have it at a regular time and place. It needs to be sacred. You need to put a stake in the ground. This is an important thing to do. Nobody misses these meetings. Nobody schedules things when they're there. I was having family meetings with one company. I think it started more as conflict resolution, but then as things started improving, they started having family meetings. And there was one guy that they could not get to come to the meetings because he didn't like being with his family. He was their top salesperson, so it was kind of hard to rein him in. And he was always flying around. He was flying from New York to California to Arizona to Alaska to Hawaii. And they were just suggesting to him, you probably could make a route that would be so much more efficient. You really don't have to go to every single place, and then you could show up to these meetings. And it just seemed to be something that he was doing to avoid the meetings, even in the way that he was planning, and I guess he liked to fly. But he showed his colors just from not coming to the meeting, that it was between him and a cousin to run the company, and the owners of the three siblings that owned the company just said, we are not going to hand this business over to this guy that can't even make these meetings. We're expressing to him how important it is that we have these discussions, and he's not buying into it, and he's not getting the company. And that's the problem in a lot of companies, is the problem person is the best salesperson. Well, you make the best salesperson the president, who doesn't necessarily have skills to preside. But you want somebody who's going to be trustworthy, that other people are going to respect and take leadership from, and this was not the guy. Just to make a very safe environment, it's easy to say in a meeting, no dumb questions. But then when somebody asks a dumb question, it doesn't get the respect. So it's good to have, again, a facilitator or people in the family that are just good at this. And if somebody asks a dumb question, you say, what I hear you saying is, and rephrase the question. There's a professor at UMass that I know that is her genius in teaching, is when anybody says anything to her that's dumb, and I've sat in on her class a few times, she's able to rephrase it in a way that suddenly it's a brilliant question. She's not imposing anything on this person. She just knows how to state their dumb question in a way that's suddenly intelligent. And you want people to shine in the room, and you also want to ask them, you're sort of teaching them how to think better. They do say that, I think it was actually the president of Harvard a few years ago, Lawrence Summers, that said that there's almost no increase in critical thinking skills from college freshmen to college seniors, including at Harvard. You need to teach critical thinking skills, and that can start at a really young age. I mean, some people might just be born very logical and reasonable, but many are not. And so if you say, I'm not really going to be able to influence my family unless I really can present myself reasonably. Family meetings are a great place to do that. And I know I'm sort of repeating this idea of why to do it, but I'm also trying to include how to do it. So you need to take breaks to enjoy. Again, I was pointing out, the person that heads the business should not head the family meetings. Teenagers could do it. In-laws could do it. A facilitator could do it. The facilitator could kind of run it, but then introduce different family members to lead different parts of it. But then you bring in guest speakers that could run part of it. You could bring in a business broker talking about, here's what makes a company salesworthy. You could talk about somebody who manages the HR department in a really good company that has a great corporate culture. We brought in the woman who's the HR manager at Sargento Cheese. They do like a fabulous job. You could bring somebody like that in to just talk about, here's what we do in Sargento Cheese. Some of these people might, in the meeting, might never work in that company, but they know what that company is. They know what their family's business is. And you look at like Campbell's Soup, it's an old company, it's a big company. They have several generations of people that have been at war with each other, and they bring in teams of facilitators, might have gotten better since I first heard this story, to just work with siblings and cousins and aunts and uncles to just all understand what it is that our family owns this big company. And here they, are just trying to understand that they're family members involved with this big business. Good to start it at a time with no crisis. That might be hard to find in some families, but if there is a crisis, that's when you need to bring somebody in to talk about that specific issue with those people. This is something that you want to build on health. And what I find as a family business consultant is a lot of families call me to facilitate conflict when they're in distress, and then when things get less distressed, they said, okay, good enough. And I'm saying, no, now we're out of pain, but we need to build wellness. We need to build immunity. And they're saying, no, we're too busy for that. So, it's good to handle the crises, but start the meetings when you're already, at a pain-free point going into a wellness, building immunity, etc. and then to just follow ground rules, which there's mediation ground rules, which include a lot of the things that that first family, the first clip, did not do right, where you have no name calling, no interrupting. You talk about positions, not people. You don't say, you make too much money. It would be positions. What is our compensation philosophy? How much do we pay somebody based on how much they bring to the bottom line? What's the return on investment of their salaries? These things need to be less personal so people can say, I've worked with companies where somebody would say, I understand that I am actually making too much money in this company. And I need to take a little decrease, even if it's to be close to my brothers that were always underpaid. There's every kind of situation out there. Or 3 siblings that make exactly the same, even though their contributions are very different, because their parents didn't want to admit, we love our children unequally. We love our children equally, so we're going to pay them equally, even though this guy's creating most of the wealth in the family. I've gone into that situation as a neutral facilitator and brought in a compensation expert and saying, here you are, 1, 2, 3, and this compensation expert says, this guy should be making this, and these 2 guys should be making this. But then the 3 of them together, with my help, said, okay, this guy's going to make a little less, these guys are going to make a little bit more, because the 3 of them saw in their case, they sort of all put in, it's like Karl Marx said, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. They felt in their case they needed to be rewarded for their effort and not be so disparate. That's not right for the company next door. And they might not be able to sell that company as well, but also this guy just wanted the respect. He wanted his brothers to say, we understand you should be making this, and we appreciate that you're going to be making this. And they got along a lot better after somebody came in with the truth, so-called truth, based on just surveys and averages. And then they got to talk about the truth. Because a lot of times you're not talking about certain things. These are the undiscussables. Everybody's thinking it. People have all kinds of assumptions about it. But you need to be able to talk about it in a safe place. As I mentioned, there's this book, Trapped in the Family Business. It's actually very interesting. You might be 100% feeling trapped. You might feel like you're in hell. Or you might just feel like, if I could snap my fingers and do something different, I probably would not be doing this. Who'd have thunk that I'd be in funeral service? It's just not who I am, right? But when you have that discussion, including everybody's a little trapped, then you get to admit that, okay, but I can live with it. Because, as my father used to say to me, and I worked with my parents, my father would say, the best job stinks, but if you're your own boss, at least it's your own stink. That was his philosophy. So, was he born to sell children's clothing? No. But there were things that he liked about it that he would freely communicate to me, and I was like in a very, very small business. So our family meetings were more like me and my parents sitting together in the back room just having some discussion. We didn't do it right, but we did it right enough for us. And, it was helpful for me to hear that my father enjoyed this job for its various rewards, even though he was not born to sell children's wear, because I wasn't born to sell children's wear either. So, just to hear from my father, who I respected, that this was his philosophy of work. What does work mean to you? So these are just values that you're sharing with your family members, so that you feel like we don't all see the same thing the same way, but at least we understand each other. So again, we're just talking about what are some of the policies that you could make in your company. Is it a meritocracy? We covered that. What would we do if we were approached by somebody that wanted to buy the company? This is a discussion that could include everybody, not just shareholders, because everybody just might have an opinion about it. And for instance, as a company that I just did a retreat for, where there were 2 brothers that were the 3rd generation of a very successful tool and die shop. And they did everything right, really smart guys in business, sold the business for a lot of money, and one retired, and one said, I don't know what my next chapter is, I'm gonna just, explore that. And then the brother that retired, his son went to his uncle and said, I wanted to be generation 4, and nobody ever came to me to discuss that. And so now the nephew and the uncle bought a dusty little machine shop, and they're building it up together and having a great time. So this guy should have been included in the discussion. Luckily, it wasn't too late, and they made something good of it. And the uncle now says to me, the purpose of my life, the purpose of my work life, is to make my nephew a wealthy man. It's so satisfying for him to do that, and his own kids are not interested in it. But again, who should be involved in the discussion? You might say, hey, he doesn't own anything. Why should we consult with him? Comments on anything that we have been talking about? Yeah. I don't. Sorry. I would just say the families that have family meetings because they do it naturally probably have an advantage over the ones that are forcing themselves to do it. It's important if you say that just doesn't feel natural to me. I mean, it doesn't feel natural to me to go to a gym and exercise every day, but when I do it, I know I'm doing the right thing. I envy the person that just actually enjoys doing it. Jack LaLanne said he never enjoyed 1 minute of exercise his whole life. So, you can't just go by, do I like doing this? But, sometimes in family business, they talk about the lucky sperm club of like, if you're lucky enough to be born into a family business, how great for you. But I think really the lucky ones are the ones that get along naturally and don't have to have family meetings. They just have great discussions without all the structure. But most people have to structure it. So I think even if there was a statistic, you'd still be sort of mingling who is making themselves do the right thing and who just does the right thing naturally. Those are two different demographics. Comments, questions? Okay. So again, making the agenda. You need a facilitator, could be a family member, it could be alternating, it could be a small team of people. I would suggest if you don't have an outside facilitator, have one person that sort of organizes the rest of the people who could have a role in that, so everybody does a section of the meeting. Now for the philosophical discussion, now for the interview with somebody from another family business, now for the role play, like I go to a conference, I go to 3 conferences a year, and in the course of 2 or 3 days, there's 18 sessions. There's no one person. If somebody hosts it, like next year, this one group of directors of family business centers, I think that you're going to host it here, she will be the host, but there's going to be like 12 different presenters. So you could do something like that. And you can steal from other people. I just did this very successful one. I would recommend this highly, is create a new mission statement for your company that actually means something to the family. And so we just did this presentation where I showed a bunch of different mission statements from different companies, and people discussed what they thought was good, bad, and ugly about that. There's also a beautiful movie online about Kikkoman, this company that's been around for like 1 million generations, and how they came to their mission and their purpose. And then we just wrote out on sticky notes like adjectives of what we thought were the values of this company, and then people started combining them and discussing them, which ones fit together, and then reducing them and trying to make it more poetic. And in the end, I've done this a couple times, came up with this mission statement that was so much more accurate and useful to the business and beautiful, and everybody owned it, and somebody could say, that was my word in there. I've actually done this not only with owners, but with frontline managers and the owners together. So somebody could do that as a, somebody could talk about, here's how our family got involved in philanthropy and made a difference in our community. Here's how we looked around at the world of policies, and these teenagers in our family made a little documentary about some famous businesses around Grand Rapids and what their favorite charities are and how they help those charities. It can be fun. It's just a family gathering. And if you don't do it for the business, do it for your family. I have to say, my family, I have a son and a daughter that are grown. We had many, we never said time for our family meeting, but we just found ourselves in our living room discussing family issues, philosophy. Their friends would come over, they would join us sometimes. Now they both have partners, they're in on it. And at the time, my kids didn't particularly like these long, extended discussions in our living room, but they look back on it really fondly. They're really proud of it. And they said, we actually both went for partners that we thought would enjoy that activity. So, you know, just, it's important for your family also, not just your business. So, we have a little bit of time left, and I have a lot more slides. I'm just going to actually go to a few of the slides that I definitely wanted to cover. Sorry, but again, all of these slides are kind of self-explanatory. Here's just a few tools that are ideas, they're philosophies to keep in mind as you're having a healthy discussion with your family. One is the idea of fair process, which is that if you have a bunch of people that might be negatively affected by a decision, right? We all need to tighten our belts. They will go along with it much more if they're given all the information. This is proven by numerous studies in large and small groups, that if you say, here's the problem, here are the solutions, this is the solution that we all need to raise our taxes, or we all need to spend 3 hours a week doing some unsavory labor, or whatever it is, if they understand the reason behind the unsavory behavior, or whatever, I'm not saying unsavory behavior, but whatever it is, they'll go along with it a lot more. Give the reason, even as a boss, but in your family meetings, it's really important to come up with this as a policy. This is the reason why we have a compensation policy, and we can't just give you a really gigantic allowance for working here, because we need to attract non-family members that are also going to work for the right salary. The other idea, I use this a lot in my personal life, the idea called ladder of inference. And again, a tool you can use in a family meeting or in an argument with your spouse. On the bottom is observable data and experiences. This is no interpretation at all. If somebody comes into work late 4 times a week, you don't say you're a slovenly, hobo that I don't know how you're working here, a reasonable boss would get rid of you. You say you came in at 8:30 on Tuesday, you came in at 9:20 on Wednesday, you came in at 11 o'clock on, you just report it. Then, because what people do is they take those facts and then they add meaning to it. Again, instead of saying you came in at these times, you add meaning. You're lazy, right? Then you make assumptions. People like you are lazy. People of your population group are lazy. Then you have a belief that you add to that. I believe that anybody that was not born here is lazy. Then you have an action. I never hire anybody from groups like you belong to, right? Even in arguments that I have with my wife, and we're together 40 years, she'll say something, or I'll say something, and the other one will say, could you restate that lower on the ladder of inference? And it's so, it's such an awkward thing to say that it actually always gets a laugh from the other person. But then I always try to say, we had a plan to leave the house at 9 and you were not ready till 12. And I don't like that. And she can handle that a lot better than you're ruining my life and wasting my time. So it's an important tool. You might talk with your family. This is what we're looking for. This is just some of the obvious traits that you would want in any leader, but research backs it up. A leader that is independent, confident, accomplished, competent. But you might say, when we go for the next leader of this company to compete in the modern world, we need to find this super person, right? If you do not have these qualities, as much as I love you, I can't pick you as my successor. Here's how to develop some of these qualities. Do you want to run this company in the future? Because I'm not telling you that you're going to, but if you even want to be in the running, you should start taking some Toastmaster, Dale Carnegie, go to therapy, whatever it is, so that you can become more this person. In one case, we had a speaker years ago that the father said, "You're not fit to do this, and I'm not giving you the opportunity to become fit." And he went out and he started working with teenage kids on, I think it was ham radio stuff, and he developed all those leadership skills just in his little volunteer activity, and then came back and said to the father, "What do you think of me now?" And the father said, "Wow, you've really grown, and I had nothing to do with it, but I have to admit, like, you look more like that profile." So this is something you might lay out to 14-year-olds. This company is something that you would aspire to. If you want to go to become a professional, we applaud that. We are not going to trap anybody in this family in the family business, but these are the qualities that we look for. Okay, this is some of the stuff that we discussed, but also just another couple of activities that you could do of study genograms. It's just a genogram is just a chart, a family tree that has like all sorts of little X's for divorce and addiction and all this stuff, and it's just fun. Don't do it with your family. Do it with the Wright brothers as a crazy family. Katharine Hepburn is a crazy family. There's a few, if you look up genograms, you'll see all of these charts, and just say, this is a way to describe a family. And just to make a point that suicide runs in families, so does alcoholism, so does betrayal. You know, these are some things that in our family we're trying to immunize ourselves. These are our values. And so, you know, we want you to know that if you have a drug problem, we don't like that, and we want you to go get treatment or whatever it is. My nephew, who is one of the finest people I know, just went back into rehab for the second time, and as much as his parents are shocked by it, and we're all shocked by it, I have to say, this kid is growing like nothing else has ever grown him before. And it's basically because his parents said, you cannot continue on this path, and this is what's going to happen. And they sort of forced him into it, and he's glad. Okay, just to go to the important ones here. Strategic questions. This is something that I do in all of my roundtables. It kind of is a staple of roundtable groups, I don't know about yours, where it's a way to ask a question that is not giving advice. It's thought-provoking. You'll know it when you see it. I used to teach it, but here's just a few examples. They're open-ended, they get people thinking, and in a meeting, if somebody states something that you don't agree with especially, it's good to get good at strategic questions. There's a lot of articles about this online. To just become the person that instead of saying, what a dumb idea that is, if you get good at this, they're going to say, somehow that person has such a loving, effective way of pointing out that my thinking is flawed. I don't feel judged by it. I actually feel like he or she has moved me in my ability to think about it clearly. So I'm just suggesting this would take more work, but there's a lot of articles on strategic questions. Okay, and this is just a couple more ideas, and then we're going to open it up for a few questions, is this work by Gallup, the 12 questions that matter. A lot of times when I go into a company, while I'm interviewing employees and owners to see where is this company at, these are a few of the questions that I have, they give me their responses, because Gallup says after, hundreds of thousands of interviews of companies that are considered to be very high leadership. All of these slides are going to be online for you to see, by the way. These are the places that you can really fix things. And you can handle this in a meeting. When I was at UMass, I did an exercise with the 40 people in continuing and professional education where I just took 12 flip charts for these 12 questions and handed out sticky dots. And I just said, just take as many dots as you need and go rank from high to low where you think we fall in all of these categories of I know it's expected of me. In the last 7 days, somebody asked me about my progress. And you can see where there were clusters of dots that in certain categories, there were high scores and low scores. And then we just brainstormed, what can we do to get these low clumps higher? And people came up with excellent ideas. In this case, they were saying, maybe if we did charity projects together, maybe if we had lunch together once a week and discussed work stuff. Then we came back a few months later and did it, and the low scores all went up. And it could have been a placebo of people just thinking we're working together on these issues. So in an hour and a half, I'm trying to just share with you some of the reasons to have family meetings. If you've been living without them, you might continue to think you can live without them, but also there's no harm in doing it. Evidence shows that it's a good practice. I'm not quite sure, somebody had asked the question, is there a difference between people that do it and don't do it? It's a best practice, right? If you do it, does it mean that you're going to rise to the top? Doesn't logically follow, but probably. It can't hurt. And so if you're not doing it at all, I would suggest that you just try it. If you want to speak to me more now or any time, I would be glad to talk with you more. I'd be glad to talk with you about looking for a good facilitator. And if you're doing it, there's a few people in here that have regular family meetings. Hopefully you got a few ideas here of how to get new and different activities to mix it up a little bit, to make it more entertaining, to make it more the right balance of practice and theory. As somebody said, this guy Yvonne Landsberg, who's like one of the geniuses of family business, there's nothing as practical as a good theory. So sometimes you start with something that's a little theoretical, and then you build on it, and you really see, like, this is helping us. So I have time for like a couple more questions if you want, and I'll be around during the socializing part. Comments or questions? Yes? Yeah, online. You can. All right. Yes?
We're now done. We're just getting into all of this kind of stuff. We're two separate families. Would you work that similar to cousins and stuff like that?
You're two families in one business?
Yes.
Yeah, I would. I've consulted to 3 families altogether, and each family was at war within their family, and then the 3 all hated each other. It's good to get together and to see what you all have in common, because some of those alliances could be the cousin, as in the clip from Avalon, the cousin over here and the cousin over here see eye to eye. And so there's no harm in it, and there's only good in it, because those families need to get together. So I would say yes. 1 or 2 more questions or comments? Yes?
I guess differentiate between a board meeting and a family meeting?
Well, a board meeting would be more just the needs of the business. This is what the business of the business. A family meeting would be the topics that are relevant to the fact that this family owns a business. It doesn't run the business. It can make recommendations to the board, so there's an interface between the two. Our family's values are such and such. We want the board to be more cognizant of that we're a meritocracy and the family accepts that. We want the board to be aware that we are going to be focusing on conflict management. We're not going to let things fester, but it doesn't run the business. And that's why you can have people that don't own stock and not involved in the business at all that are relevant to be there. I'd talk with anybody more about any of this. All right, so nothing in 90 minutes is going to change your life. I hope that this was a few ideas. Did you have one more question? No. It was nice to be with you. I'm also really enjoying my time in Grand Rapids, so thank you for bringing me here. And I'd be glad to talk with you anytime today or after I leave. So thank you so much. Thanks.
Ira, thank you very much. We appreciate your being here and being able to share this stuff with you. There is always, you talk about those gems coming out of it. I think the one thing I was thinking about from the gem perspective is, when you talk about the stories and the families that you've dealt with, at least my family at this point we seem to all get along, so there aren't the real fighting that you seem to be talking about and the animosity within it. But I think that's always, part of that as well. It's always, there's all the kind of the give and the take and everything else. So thank you very much for that. The question that was raised in regards to the Family Board of Directors, a great question, actually a timely question, because as we look at our four-part series, the next topic in our four-part series is on Board of Directors, and in particular outside Board of Directors, kind of the best practice going on there as well. So hearing today about family councils and how that works, and this will coming up in September, learning about family or Board of Directors in a family business. So we also, if you want to dive deeper into the topic than family councils, there is a sign-up sheet. I believe they're on the table as well at the registration. So if you please sign your name and email address to that. We don't have a time picked out, but we do have a facilitator. Tom Amy of Acorn Leadership is going to be talking to us further in a much more intimate setting. So this is meant to be in just a smaller group setting as opposed to a room of 100 people, to learn more about family councils and what, if your questions might be raised from today, and to be able to learn more about how to facilitate and working through that as well. There is also an event survey on your table, and Marcy will be getting that out via email as well as the link to the information in this presentation, which is a lot of great information on there. As I know, we weren't able to cover it all today, but that'll be sent out to you. And please do take an opportunity to fill that out, because it really does help us understand the event committee, and that was on the slides earlier, those who are on the event committee, be able to further understand what it is that this organization, we are a member-driven organization, what it is that we want to learn about, what we want to hear, and what the topics are. So that helps drive that committee in terms of going forward. So with that, I'd actually like Diana to join me now. I'm going to see if I can get this. Is it on? Is it now on? Okay, great. I don't have to yell anymore. So I am very excited at this point to be able to introduce Diana Shad to you. So just to kind of a little bit of a background, the board has been working over the last 6 months or so to kind of look at what is the best for this organization. And we're upwards of 200 members in the Family Business Alliance, and there's a lot of good things that are going on. So we've been taking kind of a step back and talking about where do we go, kind of that next step, the next chapter, as we're envisioning the next chapter of the organization, and how, what we're looking at to be able to lead that next effort. And so we've been kind of looking at different things and talking about different things. And today I get to introduce to you Diana Shad, who is going to be leading us into that next chapter of the organization. So Diana is not a stranger to the Family Business Alliance or to family businesses in general, as her husband Matt is running as the fourth generation. Was that right, Matt? Fourth generation of Newcraft Furniture. Now, I noticed in terms of you're talking about taking all that nice furniture out of there, Matt might have something to say about that in terms of not taking the nice mahogany table out of the boardroom just yet, right, Matt? Okay. As long as it's a Newcraft table that's replacing it, right? We're all set there. So she does have, a background in that. There is also a press release that has further information, should be on your table in your packet as well. Has a little bit of Diana's background, so I'm not going to go into that in detail. But I do want to say that we are very excited to have her here and to have her. We've been throwing her right in the midst of it as we just kind of started yesterday and coming into the first event, and a chance to be able to introduce her today, which is great, and to be able to get that information out. So, like I said, we're excited to have Diana here, and I'm going to let her just kind of take a little bit of time to kind of introduce herself and talk about what's coming up. So, thanks.
Good evening. I'm a little nervous, but I am absolutely thrilled to be up here. I got involved with Family Business Alliance 17 years ago when I married my husband, Matt, and some of you may know his in-laws, his parents, Tim and Cindy, and I knew nothing about family business. I had been an attorney and really knew nothing about sort of this unique beast that we all kind of deal with. And I started coming to FBA meetings about 7 years ago, and that was a really wonderful way to get educated on it. And a lot of it is through experience. A lot of it is through living the experience of family businesses. Many of the issues that are important to you are important to our family. We've had divorce, we've had succession, we've had aging parents, we've had illness. We've had family meetings, which have been crucial to us to get through all of that. So when I accepted this position, I felt very comfortable doing it. I felt like I knew the family business industry, and I have a background in event planning and in organization with different nonprofits, so it seemed like a good fit. I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you. As the new CEO, as Bill said, we're looking to expand our programs and look into the future for what our membership and what our sponsors want. We're looking at getting a little high tech. So I'll be reaching out to you all within the next few months to see what your thoughts are, what you envision for the FBA, and how we can better serve you, what we can do to make this a better experience for you. We have a wide range of sizes. We have some family businesses that are less than 10 employees. We have others that are more than 300. So there's different needs. But at the root of it all, we all have so many issues with families, with siblings, with patriarchs or matriarchs. There are so many issues that we share. And I think one of my favorite things about the FBA is this is a safe place to talk about that. We have our peer groups. We have these meetings where you can open up and you can rest assured that that's not going to be shared outside of this community. And I think that that's a really important thing that we can bring to the West Michigan and Grand Rapids communities. I have a few thank yous that I'd like to mention before we close and have some refreshments. First, Ira, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here, and it was a wonderful presentation. I had the pleasure of doing a few podcasts with Ira yesterday, which will be on our website. So I hope people can check those out and check out your website. You've really done some amazing, innovative things to educate the family business community. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank the FBA committee. I think Chris is here somewhere, the chair of the FBA committee. Thank you. You have done an amazing job bringing in speakers, and I know that's a lot of time that you take to do that. So thank you very, very much for allowing us to continue to bring great programs to our membership. A huge thank you to our staff, Marcy, Catherine, and Haley, and Allison, who's here writing an article about this. You do an amazing job to keep things running, and we could not do programs like this without you, so thank you. Last, I'd like to thank our sponsors one more time again, BDO, Fifth Third Bank, Warner, Bright Star Chase, Pondera Advisors, and Varnum. We could not do these programs without our underwriters' support, and we really appreciate you coming in, meeting our membership, providing us with resources, so thank you all very much for being a part of the FBA. So now we will adjourn. We have drinks and refreshments. There'll be an opportunity to meet with Ira, to meet with our board members, and to meet with our staff. And we hope that you stick around and get to meet us. So thank you so much.